logistical corridor to Crimea might be permanently shattered from a military perspective. This operation showcases Ukraine's evolution into a modern, highly coordinated fighting force. Intelligence sharing, precision targeting, and timing all played a role in pulling off such a devastating blow. It's not just about technology, it's about strategy. Ukraine waited until the moment when Russian defenses were stretched thin and then struck hard. That's military mastery in action. Ordinary Russians are starting to feel the ripple effects too. Social media inside Russia is buzzing with concern about the security of other key infrastructure points. Some citizens are questioning why billions were spent on bridges and roads that could be destroyed so easily. Others fear that the war might soon reach closer to home as Ukraine's strikes become more daring and more effective. The illusion of safety that the Kremlin tried to project is crumbling. For Putin, this is a political disaster. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 was his proudest achievement, the crown jewel of his presidency. Now, a decade later, that very prize is under siege. The image of strength and stability he built around Crimea is collapsing as fast as the bridges themselves. Domestically, this could erode his grip on power as frustration grows within the elite circles of Moscow. Ukraine, on the other hand, is gaining diplomatic traction. Countries that once doubted its chances are now increasing support, seeing that Kiev can deliver results. The destruction of the land bridge proves that Ukraine's strategy to isolate Crimea is working, and it's boosting morale both at home and abroad. Citizens across Ukraine are celebrating this victory as a sign that the end of occupation is within reach. But make no mistake, the road ahead is still difficult. Russia will not give up Crimea easily. It will reinforce defenses, deploy more troops, and strike back with vengeance. Yet the psychological blow has already been dealt. The myth of Russia's invincibility has been shattered. Every bridge that falls, every convoy that burns, and every base that explodes weakens Moscow's ability to sustain its war machine. As winter approaches, the logistical challenges will grow worse. Frozen terrain, damaged routes, and fuel shortages will make resupply nearly impossible. This could leave Russian forces stranded and demoralized. Ukraine will likely continue to exploit this weakness, targeting remaining choke points and making Crimea's isolation total. Step by step, Kiev is tightening the noose. In the coming weeks, we can expect more strikes, more international reactions, and possibly new moves from both sides. But what's clear now is that Russia's strategic land bridge, once the pride of its southern campaign, has been reduced to rubble. The consequences of this single event are enormous, both militarily, politically. It's not just a loss of infrastructure, it's a loss of power, prestige, and control. So as we watch this crisis unfold, one thing becomes clear. Crimea's fate is once again at the center of global attention. The bridge that once symbolized Russia's dominance now stands as a symbol of its vulnerability. Ukraine has shown that with determination, intelligence, and resilience, even the mightiest strongholds can crumble. That's all for today's deep dive into the crisis in Crimea and the destruction of Russia's strategic land bridge. If you found this breakdown informative, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest developments in this rapidly evolving conflict. Thanks for watching and see you in the next. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most dramatic moments in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, the destruction of Russia's vital land bridge to Crimea. This event has sent shockwaves through Moscow, and it's being called one of the biggest strategic setbacks for Russia since the beginning of the war. The land bridge, often referred to as the Lifeline connecting mainland Russia to occupied Crimea, has now been reduced to rubble after a series of devastating Ukrainian strikes. What does this mean for Russia's war effort? And how will it change the balance of power in the region? Let's break it all down in detail. The so-called Crimea land bridge was more than just a highway or railway route. It was the symbol of Russia's control over southern Ukraine, a massive logistics corridor through which fuel, ammunition, food, and reinforcements flowed into Crimea. Since the start of the war, this connection allowed Russia to sustain its military occupation on the peninsula. But now with the bridge in ruins, Moscow's entire southern strategy is falling apart. Reports from the area indicate that Ukrainian precision strikes targeted several key points along the corridor. Explosions were seen near Melitop Hall, Takmak, and along key stretches of the coastal highway that once carried endless columns of Russian military trucks. The strikes weren't random. They were surgical, aimed at crippling supply lines and isolating Russian troops stationed in Crimea. Satellite images show massive craters, burned, doused convoys, and collapsed bridges, making the route almost unusable. The loss of the land bridge has effectively turned Crimea into a giant island. With limited access routes now left, Russia's ability to send reinforcements and supplies has been severely crippled. The Kerch Bridge, the other major supply route, has already been damaged multiple times by Ukrainian attacks. Now, with both the Kerch Bridge and the land bridge compromised, the peninsula is on the brink of isolation. This situation has created chaos among Russian military commanders. According to several reports, communication between units in southern Ukraine and those in Crimea has become disorganized. Commanders are scrambling to reroute supplies using ferries and temporary pontoon bridges. But these makeshift solutions can't handle the volume or the heavy military equipment needed for sustained operations. It's a logistical nightmare that Russia has no quick solution for. For Ukraine, this is a massive victory. The strategic destruction of the land bridge was not just a random strike. It was the result of months of planning, intelligence gathering, and precise execution. Ukrainian officials say this move is part of their larger effort to cut the snake's head off, meaning to isolate Crimea and force Russia into an untenable position. And it's working. Without steady resupply, Russian troops in Crimea could soon face shortages of ammunition, fuel, and even basic necessities like food and water. Local reports from Crimea described panic among residents. Long lines have formed at gas stations and supermarkets, and people are trying to flee the peninsula before the situation worsens. Videos circulating online show traffic jams stretching for kilometers as civilians attempt to cross what's left of the damaged Kerch Bridge or take ferries to Russia's mainland. The sense of fear and uncertainty is spreading fast. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is in damage control mode. Russian state media is downplaying the incident, calling it a temporary disruption. But satellite data and independent reports tell a very different story. The destruction is extensive, and repairing the land bridge will take months, if not longer. Even if Russia manages to rebuild sections, they'll remain vulnerable to future Ukrainian strikes. This means that for now, Crimea is effectively cut off. This isolation has immediate military implications. Russian bases in Crimea, including the ones in Sevastopol and Gianco, rely heavily on steady supply routes for missiles, spare parts, and troops. With the land bridge gone, these bases are now struggling to maintain operations. Ukrainian drones and missiles have already begun targeting remaining depots, radar stations, and fuel storage sites across the peninsula, making resupply even harder. Western intelligence analysts are calling this a turning point. For months, Ukraine has been working to make Crimea unsustainable for Russia to hold, and this move might finally achieve that. The loss of the land bridge undermines Russia's ability to project power in the Black Sea and protect its naval assets. If Crimea becomes too costly to defend, Moscow may eventually have to consider pulling back forces or risk catastrophic losses. Inside Russia, the political fallout is also growing. Nationalist commentators are openly questioning President Putin's strategy, asking how such a vital piece of infrastructure could have been so vulnerable. There's anger among military bloggers, some accusing the defense ministry of incompetence. These voices, once loyal to the Kremlin, are now turning critical, suggesting cracks in Russia's propaganda wall. Ukraine, on the other hand, is celebrating cautiously. Officials in Kiev are framing the attack as a crucial step toward restoring their territorial integrity. They believe that cutting off Crimea will accelerate the collapse of Russian morale and force Moscow into negotiations from a position of weakness. President Zelensky's government has long said that Crimea must be liberated for the war to truly end, and this development brings that goal a little closer. The psychological impact of the land bridge's destruction cannot be overstated. For Russia, Crimea is not just a military base. It's a symbol of national pride. Putin himself inaugurated the Kerch Bridge in 2018, driving a truck across it as a display of strength. Now, with the land routes shattered in Crimea under siege, that image of power has been replaced by one of vulnerability. Blow to the PETMM narrative, and the attack also sends a clear message to Russia's military command. Ukraine's capabilities are growing from long-range missiles to advanced drones. K's forces are showing they can strike deep into territory once considered safe. Western-supplied weapons, combined with Ukraine's ingenuity, have turned the tide of this conflict in unexpected ways. Each strike weakens Russia's ability to sustain its occupation and increases the pressure on Moscow to reconsider its war objectives. Experts are also warning that Russia might retaliate fiercely. In the past, whenever Ukraine has struck a major target like this, Moscow has responded with waves of missile and drone attacks across Ukrainian cities. Power grids, water systems, and civilian infrastructure often become targets. Ukraine's air defenses are on high alert, bracing for potential revenge strikes. But even with retaliation, the fundamental reality remains unchanged. The land bridge is gone, and that's a huge strategic loss for Russia. For now, the battlefield situation in southern Ukraine is shifting rapidly. Ukrainian troops are pushing forward near Tokmak and Melitopol, trying to exploit the chaos created by the destroyed supply lines. If they manage to advance further, they could cut off even more Russian positions, potentially forcing a retreat. This is exactly the scenario Ukraine has been hoping for since last year, breaking the Russian lines and reclaiming access to the Azov Sea. Humanitarian conditions in Crimea are deteriorating as well. With supply convoys blocked, food and fuel shortages are becoming critical. Reports suggest that Russian authorities are rationing essentials and imposing curfews to prevent unrest. Hospitals are struggling with medicine shortages, and prices for basic goods have skyrocketed. The civilian population, which once felt relatively insulated from the war, is now facing its harshest reality yet. Internationally, this development has grabbed attention. Western governments are hailing Ukraine's success as proof that continued military support works. US and European officials are emphasizing that Ukrainian strikes are legitimate acts of defense aimed at liberating occupied territory. On the other hand, Moscow is accusing NATO of direct involvement, claiming that Western intelligence helped coordinate the attack. This accusation could escalate tensions even further. In the broader context of the war, the loss of the Crimea land bridge represents a major strategic inflection point. It disrupts Russia's southern command structure, isolates thousands of troops, and signals that Ukraine is gaining momentum. For months, the war had seemed like a slow, grinding stalemate. But now there's a sense of movement again. And it's moving in Ukraine's favor. Financially, the damage is enormous. Building the land bridge cost Russia billions of dollars, and repairing it will cost even more. With sanctions already choking its economy, Moscow will struggle to find the resources to rebuild. Meanwhile, Ukrainian strikes will continue to target any new construction, making long-term restoration almost impossible. This means Russia's dream of a stable,